Retro gaming is super in these days, but getting the best picture out of your old 8-bit games can be pretty costly. But it might not have to be so expensive. In this episode of Mudprints Unboxes, we take a look at the RetroN HD by Hyperkin. Getting that perfect high-definition NES picture and sound, no matter the method, is on the order of $200 to $500 or more to do, which is just a little on the pricey side. Hyperkin doesn't seem to think so though, as their $40 RetroN HD is a much more budget-minded way for your old 8-bit titles to be revived and played on an HD screen. Let's take a closer look. The RetroN HD comes in a surprisingly slim box. It contains quite a bit of kit, comparatively speaking. Like all recent Hyperkin products, it has the signature sheared corner emblazoned with the Hyperkin logo. The box opens from bottom to top, and the main meat and potatoes of the system are clearly visible within. Our unit is black and red, seemingly as if it was the NES's evil cousin, and that's pretty cool. A more traditionally colored unit is also available. The RetroN HD comes with everything you need to play almost any of your favorite NES games with very little mess or fuss. The system itself is very small, especially by comparison to the original NES. It is, however, slightly larger than the NES Classic Edition. On the front of the unit are two controller ports that support not only the included Cadet controller, but also any other NES controllers players may have. This allows for quite a bit of choice, including the NES Advantage, NES Max, the NES Zapper, any NES Turbo controller, and of course, the original NES controller itself. The RetroN HD features both composite and HDMI out, allowing it to interface with most CRT and flat panel TVs. One great feature is the aspect ratio switch on the back of the unit that allows for full screen picture in 16:9 or true aspect ratio of 4:3 for people picky about these sorts of things. And there are definitely picky aspect ratio people out there, so that's a nice touch. On the bottom of the unit is a switch to change the system between NTSC and PAL formats, allowing for just about any game from North America or Europe to be played properly. An excellent touch which opens the door for European, or American as the case may be, 8-bit import gaming. Looking further into the box, we find the micro USB power cable, HDMI cord, and a small power brick, which is usable in the event that the RetroN HD needs to be plugged into the mains. The RetroN HD doesn't necessarily need to be plugged directly into a plug socket, as it is easily powered by the USB port that most modern TVs have. It also comes bundled with a composite AV cable in the event that players need to hook the RetroN HD to a tube TV for light gun game action. Nice. With about the same dimensions on the X and Y as the original NES controller, the Cadet is perhaps one of the best NES controllers made to date. Featuring the same signature sheared corners as the RetroN HD itself, it also has more butt on the bottom side, allowing for a good, comfortable grip. It's a controller you could use for hours, and its buttons feel genuinely good, almost perfectly mimicking the NES's original rubber-contacted buttons. It's truly excellent, and also sold separately, making for a great replacement option for even an old NES. NES cartridges are pretty big by comparison to the RetroN HD's overall size and require a bit of effort to insert and remove, but not so much that players should fear for the well-being of their cartridges. However, cartridge removal will require players to brace the system when removing game packs. Its design cues, including the signature sheared front corner and glossy accents, make for a visually striking system despite its rather small size, and it should be able to be incorporated into most home theater and gaming room setups with ease. The Hyperkin logo even glows blue when it's powered on. Nifty. So, all in all, the overall build quality and presentation of the system is a solid winner. So how does the RetroN HD actually function? Let's take a look. So the RetroN HD is a solid package in terms of build quality and design, that much is certain. But how does it actually work? Well, with an HD output resolution of 720p, as a system-on-chip console, the RetroN HD is neither true emulation nor fully hardware-based, so there will definitely be noticeable differences between the RetroN HD's interpretations of the game a player may have, and the way that it's supposed to be seen and heard. Most noticeably, the RetroN HD has a hard time replicating certain colors over HDMI, especially with skin tones. There are several games that stuck out for us with slightly off color. It's definitely not a complete deal breaker, but it's very obviously noticeable. The same goes with certain sounds and BGM tracks. Some games like Super Mario Bros. Have very different sounding effects than the original NES had, making them sound almost like complete knockoffs, rather than the exact same actual cartridge that players have had for 3 decades. Again, it's not really a deal breaker, but it's definitely noticeable. There are also some games that refuse to work on the RetroN HD. Out of the 75 or so games that we have in our library, only 4 didn't work. The Adventures of Dino-Riki, Thundercade, King's Knight, and The Guardian Legend. There have been reports of others not working as well, though one in particular, Ninja Gaiden as it turns out, worked flawlessly for us. And yes, Castlevania 3 works too, and well at that. In addition, flash cards are totally out, and 60 to 72 pin converters for Famicom games don't really function either. Though, if a game like Gyromite works, other more modern and less complicated converters might work instead of the old one from the 80s that we have. More on that at a later date. The upscaling method also makes for an image that's slightly blurrier than you might expect. This might bother fussier players, but for us it wasn't exactly a deal breaker either. One thing we did notice is that there was a bit of delay between when the power was turned on and the picture showing on screen. This is fairly typical of HDMI in general though. Through Composite Out, the picture is instant. Some games do exhibit a tiny bit of input lag though. This varies from title to title, with shooting games seemingly being very sharp. Action platformers are much more noticeable though. But as you can see here, it's not terrible. Hyperkin has a reputation that kind of precedes them, and we have to say the RetroN HD definitely belies these general criticisms with a solid product that works really well in our opinion. Obviously, the RetroN HD is hopelessly outclassed when stacked up against the Retro USB AVS and Analog NT and NT Mini, but you also have to look at the price. The RetroN HD is only a paltry $39.99 US. The next tier up is literally the Retro USB AVS, and it's a much more significant $180 US. You could buy RetroN HD units for yourself and 4 besties for that same cost. The small hit in visuals and sound don't hurt the RetroN HD for us though, especially when games like Gunnak, Jackal, Life Force, and 1943 work as well as they do. For HD streaming, it's more than adequate, as we've seen before. However, it's not quite a replacement to record high-definition gameplay for reviews or video features. For us, that's probably a job for a much pricier setup, which we hope to cover in the future. So, how does it all come together? Let's check it out. The RetroN HD has solid packaging that ended up being much smaller than we anticipated. Great for storage when space is at a premium. The RetroN HD is well built with no real points of concern outside of the somewhat grippy cartridge slot. Switches and ports are all solid. The included cadet controller is simply amazing, and having both HDMI and composite AV cables included is awesome. Though the colors and sounds may be off, the RetroN HD is a great way to casually play NES games with little mess or fuss. Incompatibilities with a very small percentage of games, no flashcard support, and no Famicom support, even through adapters, hurts a bit though. At just $39.99 US, the RetroN HD is a great price if you're in the market for a compact system that plays the vast majority of classic NES titles from both North America and Europe. This machine is great for casual players and HD streaming, so the value here is pretty good. Reviewers will want the much more exact output on offerings like the Retro USB AVS or Analog NT and NT Mini though. On the whole, we really like our RetroN HD. It can very easily fill the hole left by the NES Classic Edition supply issues, and with the vast majority of NES games both in NTSC and PAL regions supported, players may already have a sizable library for it. It definitely has its issues, but for its meager price point, the RetroN HD is totally worth it, especially with that awesome cadet controller. The RetroN HD gets a 3.5 out of 5.